Hi, everybody. My name is Jim Spear. I am a member of Narberth Borough Planning Commission. Last week, Planning Commission and Narberth Borough Council hosted the first of three meetings comprising a design charrette examining Station Circle. It was among my tasks to first introduce the evening, and it was also my job to film the evening. And I'm afraid I did not do a very good job filming because I missed the whole first bit, including my remarks. So I'm recreating some of those remarks right now. And I started off the evening by asking the people in the audience. It was a live event. I asked them to imagine if they were going to meet somebody in Narberth, if they're going to set up a meeting in Narberth, where would they choose and why? And among the people who responded, one said a cafe, because there's seating there. Or the library, also, comfortable seating, quiet place to have a conversation. Someone said the park. Someone said Station Circle, and I think other attractive elements about these places were connectivity to the street, but also somehow insulated from the action of the street. And just to get people thinking about what are the elements people like, what are attractive social elements, and a design charrette. A design charrette is an intense period of design or planning activity. It's a meeting that assembles various stakeholders, members of the community, decision makers, and ultimately design professionals. It's a collaborative process, should be energizing and inclusive, and aimed at capturing the desires and feelings of the community and recording them before moving on with a formal design process. Station Circle was brought into being in its current state around about 2004. It was the last time it was really redone. In its current state, it mostly functions as a bunch of parking spots and as a drive-through loop for the station, but it is an area that's completely owned by the borough. It's a public area, and we can do whatever we want with it. We do not need to run it by a developer. We don't need any other kind of permission. It's owned by the borough. It's a public spot, and the point is, we can do whatever we want with it. If we want it to change, we can do it. It doesn't always have to be the way it is now. And ever since its creation, it's been the topic of speculation about how it might be improved. Starting in 2006, the Open Space Plan of 2006, the plan's goals focused largely on preservation and enhancement of existing open spaces to improve the environmental and social connectivity of the borough and to enhance pedestrian and bicycle circulation. Among the Open Space Plan's recommendations were to create a bike hub in the Station Circle area, a goal toward which a number of steps have been taken in recent years with the addition of a do-it-yourself fix-it station and better bike racks. In 2017, there was a heritage consulting process, hosted a SWOO, S-W-O-O, which stands for Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities, and Obstacles. It was a workshop at Borough Hall to discuss the community's present and future vision for downtown Narberth. Among the ideas that emerged from that exercise was a redesign of Station Circle. Around 2015, 2016, a number of classes at Temple University Landscape Architecture School, they participated through their class, they participated in examining Station Circle, and to come up with redesigns. Each student came up with a redesign. They came and watched the current function of Station Circle and how it might be improved. Virtually all of the students assigned to the exercise came up with greener, more pedestrian-friendly, and more activity-friendly ideas. In 2018, the comprehensive plan described Station Circle. Station Circle represents a prime opportunity to improve the formal and informal social structure of the borough's downtown. This plaza area was redesigned in 2004, but is often underused as a social gathering space and operates more as a kiss and ride for train commuters or for shoppers parking to run errands in the nearby stores. This civic space could include more structured elements to serve as a focal point for some of the community events and concerts, gatherings, performance theater, or just as an unprogrammed social space that encourages residents and visitors to use the space. And those were my introductory remarks. And the key recommendation of our comprehensive plan was to create alternative design scenarios for Station Circle to create a greener and more pedestrian-friendly town plaza. And those were my remarks. And at this point, I turned it over to our borough manager, Samantha Bryant, who gave an overview of the process, how this will all move forward over the next couple of months. Sadly, the recording didn't capture her either, so she will now recreate her remarks. So I'm turning it over virtually to Borough Manager Samantha Bryant.
Hi, my name is Samantha Bryant. I'm the Borough Manager for Narberth Borough. As Jim mentioned in his segment just before, we had a little bit of a technical issue. So this is a post-recorded segment to fill you in on some of the information that I shared live at the April 20th Town Square meeting number 1. The important things I want to share with the public are that, first of all, that meeting back on the 20th was the first of 3 meetings that the borough is going to have regarding the Town Square Design Project. The upcoming 2 would be on May 4th at 7 o'clock in the borough multipurpose room, and then on May 25th, also at 7 o'clock in the borough multipurpose room. The second meeting is going to be a really interactive session where people are going to be given blank sheets, from the of the area, and paired up with a member of our planning commission to work on doing some drawing and drafting, and a summary of the first meeting is going to be given to everyone, as well as kind of some general guidelines for the drawing exercise. For the third meeting, we'll be able to announce the design professional that will be working with the borough on the project. And that person will get to hear a bit about, where we've come, what we're doing, what we've done in the first 2 meetings, and really kind of, set the transition for that person to then be able to take, our community vision and make it into something that the borough could actually implement and construct. In terms of that design professional, something else I had shared at the meeting on the 20th is the process for selecting that person. Members of the Planning Commission and myself and our Council Vice President, Michelle Panopoulos, had a chance to meet with some of the interested design professionals over at the Town Square back on April 7th. And we had a really great meeting to, let them learn more about Narberth and everything like that. And we received proposals from 3 firms on April 22nd. We're currently, the borough's in the process of reviewing them now. And our planning commission on their meeting on Monday, May 2nd is going to, take a first look at them. And then Borough Council on Thursday, May 5th is also going to review and possibly come to a decision as to who the design professional for the project will be. Beyond this process, the other thing I shared at the first meeting is once we have finished these 3 meetings, as I mentioned before, the design professional is going to take what the community has really worked together to provide in terms of a vision and sketch out something for us that, again, we can actually move forward on in terms of getting grant funding and actually being able to build. I think my goal for this process would be that the borough in 2023 would work to get the funding in place for the project. 2022 would be finishing up the design. 2023 would be getting the funding in place for it, either through grants or donations or borough funds. And then in 2024, as part of that budget process, we would actually be able to construct the project, which, talking with the folks on the planning commission, we all think would only take, take a few months to do. So we're really excited. This meeting was the first step in a process that hopefully at the latest by, mid 2024 or the third quarter of 2024, will produce a town square for us that, meets the needs of borough residents and makes the great community that we have an even better place to live. So thanks for watching this video. After this, it is going to go back to the actual live presentation, and hope you enjoy. And as mentioned in that video, please send any suggestions you have over to the borough office. Thank you.
Presentation for us, which if anybody's ever seen him talk about the history of Narberth in the past, is something to take in and to bring your kids, because he's that good. So the fundamental message that he was going to deliver tonight and will deliver in 2 weeks is that our station circle has been redesigned and worked over numbers of times over the years since it started out as a taxi stand when Hector was a pup. Okay, it's always been related to the train, and it will continue to be for the foreseeable future. But the community has come together to beautify it, to plant posies in it, to improve the pavements, to provide some seating, to provide other amenities over the years. And he will document that with photographs, because believe it or not, we have all this information, all recorded in the Friends of Narberth History archives. So that'll be very much fun for us all to learn about. I apologize on his behalf that he can't be here tonight to entertain us. So you guys have just got to stick with the 3 of us for another 45 minutes or so. I'd also like to introduce David Brower, who is another member of the Planning Commission. The 2 of us are architects. We pretty much joined at the hip. We went to University of Pennsylvania Architecture School together many years ago. I won't say how many, but quite a few. Did I turn the mic off?
Yeah.
Oh, is it better with the mic off? Yes, no. Okay. Thanks. Is that back on again? This is a terrible mic. Okay. So our goal here tonight is to elicit from you folks, one way or another, your ideas about the space. You all live in the town, I guess. Presume anybody not live in Narberth? Even if you didn't live in Narberth, we'd be interested.
It's fine if you don't.
It's fine, you're allowed.
I'm nearby.
You're nearby, you're in Nearberth.
Technically
Okay.
not in Nearberth.
There's another Nearberth back there. Thanks for admitting that. We won't hold that against anybody. But we've all had experiences living in this town, one way or another. We've shopped here, we live here, we go to the train. I myself rode the train for 30 years, I think, to go to work downtown. So we have opinions about what's good and what's bad about the space, and we want to know what your opinions are, good and bad, tonight, or in the near future, by whatever means, including emails, smoke signals, semaphore, whatever you want, however you want to convey it to us. We want to know what you think about the space. We also want to know what your dreams are. It's been suggested that the space has vast potential to be a center. We just heard about how it's used by the bicycling community as a meeting place and as a center of operations, basically, for them. And that's good stuff. Even if they don't linger there or eat their lunch there, they convene there, and that makes it a center for them. So what other functions can people in this room think of that would be appropriate to use that space for, or things that we haven't done before? For example, just think outside the box. Could we have a summer theater activity in there, or something like that? So think creatively about the kinds of things that would be nice to have in our downtown that we don't have now, that might be able to be accommodated in that space. Behind me is I hope everybody can see it on the wall, is a sort of a cartoon plan of the space as it exists today. Is that legible to anybody? Does anybody not understand what they're looking at there? We've stripped out all the detail and all the street furniture and trees and then whatever else is there. It's just the bones of the plan of Station Circle the way it is now. But the buildings that surround it basically form a container, and it's up to us what we put in that container. It doesn't just have to be a mediocre parking lot. Mediocre is a generous term that I'm using to describe it. So we invite you to engage with us in a conversation about the pros and the cons, but mostly about the possibilities of this space. We have several ways of doing it. I'll call on you in 1 second.
I guess my question is, like, I hate to look at this mutually exclusive or whatever, is we have a lot of things going on in Narberth right now. We have 3 large apartment buildings. We're losing parking space as it is. Are we finding another area where people can park? Because I'm sure the merchants of Narberth are not going to be okay, and I'm sorry I don't see any of them here, are not going to be okay with losing, losing parking spaces in the circle. So I guess my question is, would I love to have an area for theater? Well, playground's a perfect opportunity for that too. We do have a lot of other open space that we can use. I guess my concern is that if we're looking at this to be something different, and it sounds like we're down a path to do that, how are we?
No, that's not true. We're looking for your ideas, and you are in the process of delivering an idea.
Yeah,
about
even for a training team, if you're down there at 8 o'clock in the morning or at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you're right. It's a steady parade of people picking up people from the train station. If we do something with that space, where are those people, except for stopping midstream on Haverford Avenue, going to stop to pick up people? So there are things that I think we need to think about as we're making changes in Narberth, is how it's impacting other
So
issues.
I invite you to come and pick up a Post-it note here and a pen.
Okay, I have those.
And write your thoughts down, and everyone else in the room, please do this.
There are numerous ways to get the ideas down. We have Post-it notes that can be posted onto the plan behind us that we will be taking with us after this and organizing them. There are the little note pieces of paper that were on your seats. There's email, of course, and electronic ways to get in touch with us, and we welcome all of it. The point tonight is to hear all of these thoughts, opinions, concerns, and the way the charrette will be organized is the first meeting tonight is to generate that first conversation about the Station Circle. As Jim mentioned, he and I are both architects. I think for me, one of the hardest things to learn about being an architect is to shut up and listen, which architects, frankly, aren't always very good at.
I've done it. I've done that now.
But we've both been on the planning commission now for 15 some years. We've thought a lot about what Narberth could or should be. But what we think really doesn't matter nearly as much as what all you think. And the importance of this process is for all of us on this side of the table to shut up and listen. And that's what we're here for tonight. The second meeting, which will happen in a couple of weeks, the first thing we will do in the intervening time is to take all these pieces of information we get and collate them in some organized way. And the beginning of the second meeting, we will present them back to you. And under the heading of, this is what we thought we heard you say. And in this room will be set up a number of tables with this base drawing laid out on each of them, with rolls of tracing paper and lots of big fat pens and scales. And those of us on the Planning Commission at each table to help guide the conversation. And that will be the real heart of the charrette, of just sitting down and starting to draw lines on paper and get some of these ideas down. And after that, we will take those ideas and in a perfect world, there's enough conformity in ideas between the different tables to come up with a consensus plan that we will then present in the third meeting. Sometimes there might be 2 or 3 plans that represent various ideas. But the idea is to hand over.
You've done what I did.
Did I turn off?
Yeah.
Oh. All architects are.
Is it working?
All architects are electronically challenged. But the idea is at the third meeting we will present a scheme which best represents what the consensus view was of what the station town square, should be. And at that meeting we will introduce, as Samantha said, the new design team, and they will take that and start running with it. So that's what we're here for tonight. I think everybody recognized what is here. If you need a little orientation, the street running horizontal left to right is Haverford Avenue. Essex Avenue is the street on the left. Forest is on the right. We are defining the project space, not only what we think of as a station circle, which is literally the circle in the middle, but is really the zone that goes from corner to corner, from Forest to Essex. And again, we are coming into this with no preconceived ideas of what exactly happens between the corners, and what the project may or may not contain. But we knew from the beginning that we didn't want to limit our thought process to just the circle and the parking spaces around the circle and what happens there. So with that, we probably talked way too much, and the idea is to throw it open to all of you. Yes?
You wouldn't necessarily have to lose those spots. An idea that has been proposed is to close it off as a pedestrian zone and put angled parking along Haverford Avenue and just have an exit lane for the parking lot behind the stores coming out, and make so that, because coming from the south side, you have to cross 2 lanes to get to the downtown. It's very unwelcoming. So that would have a pedestrian zone and only 1 lane to cross, and you could save most of the parking spots that way.
I'm not sure I understand. Where would the diagonal parking be?
Should I point?
Yeah, are you saying on Haverford Avenue?
All right, so just a quick,
This has been proposed like along here. You would save most of the spots.
so just a quick ground rule for our conversation that I think works really well for a lot of other public meetings in the borough is there's going to be a lot of ideas raised tonight, a lot that people are going to agree with, a lot that people may not agree with. I would ask that everyone direct your comments to the group of us here. You're welcome to respond to comments that other people make, but I don't think people in the crowd should make comments to each other necessarily. Just please direct all comments to us, please. Thank you.
There's also, we should mention at the beginning, there are, I can think of only 2 real design constraints that we're limited by. Did it go? You know, this-
There's just stand up and yell.
I think we may have broken it for good.
No, that's good.
I'll hold it.
Right. Okay.
Just
is it
stand up
working?
and yell,
Okay.
come on.
Teamwork.
All right, there are 2 design constraints. One is this microphone. One is we can't touch the station. As much as most of us would probably like to touch the station with a wrecking ball, we can't. At some point in the future, Amtrak/SEPTA may replace what's there now. But for our purposes right now, this is the edge of the platform. These are the steps that go down. This is where the tunnel is. We can't touch any of that. The other constraint is that we have the exiting from the parking lot behind the stores that has to in some way get from here to there. I'm not saying, again, with no preconceived ideas how that happens, but somehow we have to be able to get the cars exiting here to Haverford Avenue. Other than that, I think we're open to just about anything.
Even if we accomplished all that stuff, let me just tack on today's comment, there's still a lot of real estate there. So be of good cheer, do not despair. There is room to solve some of those technical necessities and still have space to play with for other amenities.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if that's necessarily a constraint, right, that traffic needs to come out that way, because we're going to have, as everyone said, a lot of development in the future downtown that I think we could maybe leverage to find another way to route that traffic if we're so inclined.
Kelly, I guess that's the constraint in this moment in time, but in 50 years down the road, would it necessarily be a constraint? I understand that.
That's the wonderful thing about urban design, it never is done. So we can only respond to what we see in front of us now and in the foreseeable future. But
Right, in the foreseeable future, right, there's discussions of development behind the shops on Haverford, and if whatever the developer proposes to put there is not a by right project, right, we have some leverage to get, maybe, like I said, another way to route traffic out from behind there. So I don't think we should necessarily constrain ourselves to, we have to have traffic coming out of Station Circle.
okay.
Is there a way to go back and look at those earlier slides with the Temple students' vision? Because having been to those presentations a few years ago, it was just mind-altering to see what students that were studying landscape architecture with brand new, fresh eyes and no preconceived notions, vision for that space. I mean, the stuff that they came up with was just so inspiring. So I almost wonder if that could help get the wheels turning with like the shoot for the stars. Because, you know, we've all been here so long, it's really hard to look at that and see something different because we've been living with that for so long now. I'm just curious if there's a way to look at those other stuff.
I'm sure there is. I think that's a great idea. I remember when I saw that presentation, I remember thinking, wow, I never thought of that one. You know, and student projects, I was saying earlier, student projects are student projects after all. What they lack in experience, they make up for in imagination. And you get some really, really interesting ideas that come out of them.
Yeah, to follow up on Kim's point, could we see a couple of them and look at them for a little bit longer to get the wheels turning?
Can you distribute the slide deck?
What about the slides? Yeah, just put them up again for a little bit.
I guess they're part of the slideshow, maybe we could just post them on the borough's website, people could
Well,
look at
do you
them.
have it right there, Michelle?
I don't have all of them, I just have a couple.
Why
of
don't you
them.
just run through them quickly, because that's a very reasonable request.
Okay, well,
If
they're
they
kind of set to
stimulate
just kind of,
thoughts, that's good.
let's see.
Okay, so just hold there, for instance.
So,
Hold.
bring back the trees.
Well, I mean,
Okay, so there's exit along the one side, is that right?
Oh, I mean, there were so many of these projects, I can't even, there were probably dozens of the times that he did the classes. This
They
is
might
just
have also
random sampling.
not had the logistical restraints.
Well, we can put it on the website,
Yeah, whatever we've got.
kind of
then you can
they-
peruse them at your leisure.
Yeah, it's hard to study them here, but I think just flipping through the slides, what it tells me, and I haven't seen them now for several years, is that, as Jim, alluded to before, there's quite a bit of real estate here to work with. Even when you get done with the concerns about needing to exit the parking lot and the parking spaces that may or may not need to happen, you still got a lot of land to work with and a lot of opportunity.
do you know off the top of your head how much land it actually is? Like you said, there's a lot, but from building to building? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think, again, another little ground rule for everyone is that please don't speak unless called upon, just so we can keep it orderly with this many people here.
Yes.
Let's answer that question. No, we don't. It doesn't.
Not offhand.
And at this stage, it doesn't really matter. Beyond saying there's a lot. And lots of things are possible. One of the things these student projects reflect is that there's millions of ways to address the repurposing of a space like this. You'll notice some of these have a whole lot of trees, some of them have a lot of hardscaping, a lot of them have no parking at all, a lot of them have some parking. A lot of them have fire lanes, some of them have fire lanes. That's kind of an adult thing to worry about in school, but we will have to provide fire lanes and emergency access capability because we're grown-ups and we have to do that kind of thing. But there's a wide variety of solutions to this, and land is not, the availability of land is not a constraint.
Yes.
I was wondering, it seems like parking is going to be kind of a larger issue. It would be helpful to know how many parking spaces are there now, as well as with all the new construction, how many parking spaces are being added and if any of it is public.
There are 14 existing parking spaces, one of which is handicapped.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So you mentioned that the space that we have to really look at is between Essex and Forest. And across the street, what does that mean as far as the buildings are concerned there? I mean, those are also constraints, the buildings are not going to be changed in any way?
No, the buildings are there.
Okay.
Yes, I should have said that. The buildings, this and this represent the two buildings that are under construction now. And those building footprints are based on the submissions that we were given as part of the approval process. So that's a pretty good bet that that's what's going there. All the other buildings are existing, and as far as we know, are not going anywhere.
I don't want to cut anybody off. I'm thinking about, just as a concept of use of space, I don't know what we call it, pavilion gazebo at in the space between the playground and the library. There's this lovely it's steps in the front, but they also can function as seating. And then it's a covered platform. I'm sure everyone knows what I'm talking about, right? I often think of that as being just a wonderful place I know we use it for concerts and sometimes people meet there. I went to a Narberth Garden Club lecture there where it started to rain mid-lecture and we all huddled and it was totally fine. And so the wonderful kind of open but covered space, and I often think about that being more centrally located, how wonderful it would be to have this gathering space that could be available to anyone to book and use for an event. We often do events down at Station Circle or nearby, Santa at the train, the music festivals where we actually build a stage in the middle of the street and close the traffic. But had we a platform that functioned as a stage, as a performance area, as a meeting center, I'm even picturing, if it's not being used for an event, tables and chairs. I think people would get food and go and sit. And so just thinking about that covered space that's a little elevated, being multifunctional, multi-use in the center of our community would be a huge asset.
So I'm one, kind of curious if anybody's done any research on what makes a great public square, but thinking in terms of like European piazzas and things, perhaps we want a fountain or public art or something that draws attention and like a place to sit that's, shady, but like something that would draw attention. I also think it could be used as a farmer's market. Like there's a lot, like a million things we could use there, that the main thing is what will draw attention and have people come there. Because it is true, like, I think the only time I ever cut through there is when I walk my dog on the other side and come through the tunnel and then I cross over. Or otherwise I kind of never really go into that circle. So what would, bring all the neighbors out to want to go into that circle?
I think all those things would, that you enumerated. That's exactly the kind of thinking we want to hear tonight.
Well, has somebody studied the various station stops in the United States or even in just this area, not to mention Europe, and found things that are significantly nice that we would like to copy? Have we?
No.
Might be useful to do.
But the consultants that we will hire will have done so because that's what they do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
We are just barefoot Narberth boys here. Yeah, she's not a Narberth boy though. Yeah. If you dare.
Yeah, right. All right, let's see how this goes. So the Montgomery County Planning Commission actually put together some resources on transit-oriented development that included, and it was shared with the group here as well. And I think that document has a lot of great resources too on how to, where they've looked at all the substations in the area and how they're designed and future design considerations.
Yes.
I would say it would be important to minimize hardscaping and have lots of green, trees, shrubs, seating. Covered platform is great, but what's so very off-putting about Station Circle to me is the concrete. It's hard, it's not inviting, it's hot, slippery. Yeah.
Sure.
Is it appropriate for me to make a comment? This is one thing that I want to make sure that I say, because one of the things that's really problematic for me in our downtown is the way, not people who live in Narberth, but the people cutting through, and once the bridge is open, there'll be more of that, really don't treat Haverford Avenue as if it is as much of a pedestrian area as it really is, a small downtown. And we have the crosswalks, we put the little crossy guys, they get pushed out of the way, pedestrians, and people just act like, I'm just driving through, and this might be an opportunity to use this project. But they can, right now, Station Circle stays out of the way, it's like, here's the curb, we're over here, and that's for you with cars. Is there a way to think about this project in a way that integrates and becomes a traffic calming, and kind of pushes out into that car space a little bit and says, hey, this isn't just a street, you're sharing this.
That's really interesting.
I got 2 words for you.
What?
You bet.
What did you say?
Traffic calming.
I said, you bet, because I completely agree. With my mind, the great little urban spaces that I've been fortunate enough to see across the pond, in Europe mostly, have that feature in spades. That there are spaces that are shared by pedestrians and automobiles some of the time, but that feel more pedestrian in character, and it has a magical effect on those crazy drivers in their Lamborghinis and whatnot. They slow down because they know they're in a world that isn't theirs. It's not the Autobahn, it's the town square.
So one of the things that I've seen in Europe that works beautifully for that is that rather than having pedestrians step down into the street space, that the crosswalks for pedestrians are raised up, and the cars have to sort of drive into them, and so they're very much aware. And I've not seen that in this country, but I have seen a few towns that have elaborate flower-painted crosswalks where it's just clear that there's a big mural in the street. This is not about this being your car space, and it really changes the way drivers use the space. It becomes a public square which they are allowed to cut through if they're gracious about it.
I just want to try to echo some of these comments in a different way, which is when I drive down Hanford Avenue, Station Circle's like kind of happens over there on the left-hand side. And I think what I hear people saying is that when you drive down Hanford Avenue, if it were more like a European square, you would know you were traveling through a square. You would know you were traveling across a space. You would feel you were in that space even though you're in your car. And right now it's really like this thing, just like Michelle said, that happens over there. And I think those are really good ideas that I wanted to echo.
I was just going to say, if we're also, considering the roads up by Essex and Forest too, relating to what everyone was just saying there, raised crosswalks at those intersections, I think would be a real big benefit to everything else we're talking about here, regardless of what specifically goes in Station Circle. Making it more pedestrian friendly and keeping the cars separated would go a long way towards making it much more approachable and usable.
Now let me stop everybody right here. Are you guys writing some of these things down on your little Post-it notes and everything? Come on now. Because these comments, most of which are excellent, are going to disappear into the ether if we don't record them.
I play pickleball twice a week at the water tower at Chestnut Hill, and on my way over, once I get over past the Walnut Street Bridge, there's an area there where they have long runways, like Haverford Avenue. And they have 2 or 3, and I'm not suggesting this, maybe raised sidewalks would work better, but the bumps that you have to stop or you're going to lose your shots. You have to stop and go over them, a number of them. and maybe PennDOT wouldn't, whoever the powers to be, does not want that, but the traffic altogether in Narberth, particularly coming down Dudley, that first block of Dudley where we live, they're flying. And once you get to the top there, it's completely blind.
Well, the good news is Haverford Avenue is not a state road, so PennDOT doesn't come into it. The borough can decide.
But I'm telling you, people, I used to go when they weren't there, and they were 40 and 50 miles an hour along these quarter-mile stretches. Not anymore.
So one of the best concepts I thought from the Temple students, those of us who were there will remember, was the Warnoff concept, which I think we've been talking about. It's called a Warnoff. I don't know how to spell it, but it's a European concept for a raised road, that could be made of cobblestone, a section of road that's contiguous with the green space. And he used the same material to extend the space. So you could imagine that on Haverford, and then it would be easier to imagine that as a much larger gathering space when we close down Haverford, for events. And in a way we've already kind of field tested this with the old gas station site, Cadence Gym. it's just kind of a natural gathering spot, not just at the train station, but extending across Haverford. So that would be a way of, doing more than just a raised crosswalk, but really extending the gathering space.
So just seeing the transformation of Suburban Square over the past few years, I feel like it's just something that we should be looking at as near neighbors. I know a lot of NARBs that are close to my age with kids a few years older. The thing that they write to me about is my kids hop on their bikes, they bike to Suburban Square, they hang out in that little plaza area, they spend all the money I give them in Ardmore, and then they come home. So what I'm hearing from folks my age with kids that are tweens and teens are, why can't we do that in Narberth? Like, why can't our station circle turn into a space where the kids don't want to leave Narberth? I mean, maybe they do. But they leave the house and they go hang out in our downtown and spend money in our downtown. I know even my husband and I, we hop on our bikes because Suburban Square has their summer concert series. We get food down there, we go hang out, we listen to music, and it's all happening in that town center. And it's just, it's a shame that we're leaving Narberth to go spend our money and do that in Ardmore. So I'm just envisioning, as we're talking, that space with that same feel. But also, when you're going through Suburban Square now, you might not notice it in a car, but I notice it on a bike. They have Wooners now in Suburban Square. When you're traveling down that main drag, Coulter Avenue, I think is what it's called, you go up onto this raised table and then you drop down off of it after a couple of blocks. And as a bicyclist, that area feels so much safer now because the difference in traffic speeds are so dramatic. Because as Bob was mentioning, it's like the drivers now know they're not traveling alongside a space. They're literally like traveling through a space. And the lines are so blurry between like what's road and what's people-oriented area that I feel like there's so much more on alert. So if we could achieve something like that here in that Forest to Essex section, I think that would be super cool. And I am a business owner in Narberth, and for me, I would love people to get attracted to downtown and come and linger and go get a hoagie from Paul and go hang out in Station Circle. So I mean, I understand the parking aspect of it, but if there's a way to shift the parking to another area and kind of reclaim that space as a town square, I feel like it would just be such a win.
Way in the back.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I think we need to keep in mind, though, Narberth's, a half a square mile or whatever is, we've got a huge space at the playground. I think the Chet Tyson Pavilion is underutilized. That whole area right there between the playground and actual buildings. But Ardmore's a little bit different because their main drag is Montgomery Avenue, and they have an off-street that they've been able to really slow traffic and widen the roads. And we don't have that. We don't have a wide road. You have to go all the way up to Montgomery Avenue really for a flow-through of traffic. So it's almost like you'd have to shut the traffic off at Haverford and Montgomery to sort of build the square, and that's what concerns me. Is another thing with Suburban Square, and I do love it too, is there's no residents living in Suburban Square. They're all across from Montgomery Avenue. We have homes right in the center of Narberth. We have apartments above all of the stores. It's a little bit different dynamic. So I don't know, I'm concerned that we're going to try to make this square, not thinking of things like parking and the people who, I know people in those apartment buildings that have 2 cars, and where right now they're parking 3 blocks away. Now, how much further do they go once we have 3 more apartments? So to me, I think it's critical that we have to look at the construction that's happening with the apartment buildings and the stores before we do anything with that square. Or at least in conjunction with, because we don't know what the dynamics are going to be once we find, that 51-unit apartment building that has 51 parking spaces. They might have 100 cars. They might. I don't know. It's possible. So I just think that we all need to think that as these dynamics are happening, we have to be sure that we tie them all together. That we don't arbitrarily say, like, let's make this pretty square, and then we had no place to park anybody, nobody's coming to the stores, because I'm telling you, the retail people in Narberth, and you tell me, it's not all Narberth coming in. You have people that have to, that are from the neighboring communities that have to be able to drive to Narberth and park and utilize those stores. And so we need to really think through all of that.
Everyone's talking about this from a north side perspective. I want to speak for the south side as a long-term resident. Our entrance into this circle is extremely inaccessible and unwelcoming. I am not an architect. I don't know if a ramp could be built on either side of the tunnel, but that would make it accessible. There's a lot of people coming on wheels, or like me with bad knees, and those stairs are pretty steep. There's strollers, there's people in wheelchairs, scooters, kids on bikes. If there could be a wheeled accessibility through the tunnel, an entrance to this that, and the whole thing needs to be accessible. And it's not enough to say, go to the bridge, because this is our public square. It should be accessible to everyone, and the bridge isn't going to be there. I mean, they're going to have pedestrian access, but that is a really steep hill going up to the bridge from the south side. I don't do that, and it would be great to be able to like ramp, tunnel, ramp, open up into the town square. So it's not just something we pass by. This is how we get to Narberth.
So I'd like to address as the mayor, not even as the mayor, just as a resident and as a business owner, I'd like to address some of the concerns I'm hearing in general. I've lived next to this 56-unit apartment building that's been built, and they do have parking. The new zoning regulations have established parking on premises for the people in these new buildings. None of the downtown parking was ever and is ever going to be permanent parking for residents because it's metered. You can only stay there an hour, 5 hours, 10 hours, maybe 2 hours. So that the meter parking is going to, remain for customers and shopping. On Forest Avenue, they have just reinstalled all the meters that had been gone during construction, and now there's a lot of parking on Forest Avenue, on that 100 block of Forest Avenue, and in fact, there are 2 more spaces than we ever had before, because there had been a parking lot, and now there's no longer a parking lot. So on street, we actually have more parking on Forest Avenue than we ever had before. So that, it's a little bit, and I've particularly noticed in the last week or so since the meters have been installed, we have tons of parking on Forest Avenue, which is an interesting development, because that's new, since those meters have been reinstalled. There's 5-hour meters, there's 1-hour meters, but we have 2 more spaces than we ever had. And so as a store owner, there's actually plenty of parking as of last week on Forest Avenue, which is interesting.
But that's not with the 57, or I think it's only 51 units full.
So I don't want to break the rules of talking, but if I may.
Yeah, so we're talking each other out of
if I may. My thoughts, and I've heard this concern over and over again, that people are going to have hundreds of cars in these units. The fact is, you know going into it, you're going to have one space allotted to your apartment. I just want to think about this. Imagine if you are a 2-car family and you know you're going to move into this 1-bedroom apartment, but where are you going to put your other car? And you know it's going to be a challenge. You're going to have to park 3-4 blocks away. You might decide that apartment's not the right place for you. You might decide that maybe you only need 1 car because frankly the other car is a bit of a pain in the butt. I would imagine if that were me looking at that, I'd recognize that as a problem prior to moving in and probably would think that that's not the place for me, or I would get rid of 1 car. Or you'd find a different solution, but it's not going to involve the downtown parking spots because those are metered spots and you can't use them. And so I don't want red herrings to create problems that aren't there. The whataboutisms. So just my thoughts.
Okay, let's not make this another.
Laurel, Mississippi, they have the lights in their downtown crossing the street.
I haven't seen that show, but I will check it out on my recommendation.
Other ideas? Please.
Yeah, riffing off that, one of the things that they have used is artwork of some kind, a mural or something to like draw people in. So it could be some kind of artwork in the circle or in the square or whatever it's going to be, or maybe the murals on the street. I don't know.
We own that.
Following that one, plaques like they have down in Center City near the Dilworth Plaza showing the history of Narberth and the old buildings and then and now. Just put around somewhere.
We could have a Dennis Montagna on loop. He's not here to defend himself, so he's probably not going to like that idea.
Following up on that, I'm even thinking of when I've been to Charlottesville, Virginia. There is, on their promenade, which is a pedestrianized downtown corridor, there's this interactive art piece, which is like a chalkboard wall. And I appreciate that every time I go there, I can stop and linger and just see like the community's evolution of like the art and the quotes and the poetry and this and that. And even a few years ago with the parklet that was downtown that had the chalk walls, people were coming and the kids would have something to keep them busy, or like people would leave poetry or little sayings, and I thought something like that could be really cool and interactive.
Please.
Yes, if you remember, Santa Fe Burrito used to have a chalkboard, and that was the only place we could eat out with our kids because they would be busy and not scream.
Are we running out of ideas? Jennifer?
I just wanted to take this opportunity to suggest that, let me put my glasses on to get this, so I get the numbers right. Climate Action, NARBS, and NARBS is aiming for 100% renewable energy for electricity by 2030 and 100% renewable energy for heating and transportation by 2040. So we can help contribute to that by keeping those goals in mind as we set forth on this project.
Do I have any more comments?
I think one of the important things, as has been mentioned a couple times here tonight, any of these ideas that you've had, please be sure that you get them written down on the cards, and that way we can collect those at the end of the night, as well as was discussed. My business cards are downstairs, but just for anyone who doesn't get that, my email address is sbryant, BRYANT, @narberpa.gov. If you'd like to send any ideas to me, and I can get them to the rest of the group as well for consideration at the next meeting.
Also, we have Post-it notes there. We have Post-it notes elsewhere.
And pens.
And we'd encourage you to write any of these ideas, including the ideas you've just said, memorialize them on a Post-it, and feel free to stick them right on that paper copy of the map over there. And are we moving to refreshments too?
Yeah, exactly. Say if you have food and drink here for everyone, please take some, because I have no willpower, and they I will probably take care of. So.
Madam Mayor.
Getting back to ideas for the circle, a meeting space. We have a lot of events in our downtown, and we're losing the other corner. It'd be great to have a meeting place to centralize a lot of the events, the scavenger hunts for the kids, the scavenger hunt for adults, the Dickens, all the music festivals. It'd be great to have an area where we can stage a lot of the events.
Thank you.
Refreshments.
Yeah, so everyone feel free to get refreshments you like, whether you're sticking around to do some notes or chat or heading out. And leave us any notes you have. Feel free to take advantage of the post-it notes. And if you know Harper will be sticking around for a little bit here if you want to chat with any of us. And otherwise, thank you for coming out here tonight.
All right, so. Hey, come on.
I'm Chef.
Hi, how are you? Good, thank you.
Good.
He was doing more.
Yes, but I
I mean, I will say that what I've done in the past was very over 2 days and then.
This was another conversation. Don't leave though. I'll be right there.
That's what they're great. That could be just, sometimes it might yeah, I got those.